Welcome, everyone. So I'm Cindy Nebel, and I am so fortunate to be joined today by Jessica Jackson, who is the Director of Professional Learning for the Learner Variability Project at Digital Promise. And so she's here today kind of to share this resource with us. I know a little bit about it, but I'm sure I'm about to learn a lot more. And so I think we'll just start. So hi, Jessica. Thank you for joining me today. We'll start there.
Yes, thanks for having me.
And let's just start with what is the Learner Variability Project?
Oh, thank you. Well, the Learner Variability Project is really working to make an understanding of learner variability more accessible, and also the research on learning sciences that helps us understand all the different factors that can impact learning, help make that research more accessible. And so our team has built a tool. It's free and open source. It's called the Learner Variability Navigator. And this really synthesizes a lot of research on factors and research-based strategies that can support those factors.
Which is great. That lines up perfectly with our mission, right? Which is just like, let's get this out there and into people's hands. So I love it. So we're talking about learner variability. And I think that that kind of terminology isn't exactly what we have talked about before. So can you speak a little bit to what learner variability is and what it is not?
Yes. Thank you for that. Learner variability is the recognition that each student has a unique set of strengths and challenges across a whole child framework that are interconnected and also can vary according to context. And so it's important to understand that when we're talking about learner variability, we are talking about every student, not just students who have been diagnosed with a disability. We're all unique in the way that we learn, and the way what works best can really change according to context. So, you know, uh, online learning versus in-person learning, or math versus literacy, all of those things can kind of impact the way we access content and the tasks and demands. And similarly, learner variability is not the same as learning styles. Learning styles is actually not backed by research, because what learning style says is that we have this one preferred way of learning that works best for us all the time: visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. And that's actually not true, because as we just talked about, it really varies according to context and what the task at hand is. And so what research does show is that having all three modalities present is usually best for supporting processing new information into long-term memory. And so I think it's important to understand that, because a lot of times when I talk about learner variability with teachers, they're like, oh yeah, I'm a visual learner. And I think that it's important to know that's not the same thing, and also understand that sometimes when we say that, it can kind of be a self-limiting belief. I've heard teachers say, well, I don't want to listen to that podcast because I'm a visual learner. And, so kind of making sure that we're not also repeating that for students and labeling them a certain way and only giving them things in a certain format is important.
Yeah, I've talked before about the fact that it's a really good thing that the learning styles hypothesis has no support, because it means that as educators, we are free to actually use different modalities to give things to students. And like you said, we want to try to do that in multiple modalities when possible. But really, it's matching to materials that matters way more than matching to individuals when we're talking about learning styles. So for example, trying to be a surgeon and learn how to do surgery auditorily. Like, what? That doesn't make sense, right? That doesn't make sense.
Exactly.
Obviously, that's kinesthetic, right? Even if you're a visual learner, you're gonna need kinesthetics there, right? Yeah, thank you for that. So you mentioned with learner variability that one of the things, and I know that this is built into the tool, is talking about sort of the interconnectedness between some abilities. Is that the right way of saying that?
Factors was what we said.
Factors. Okay. So can you maybe give an example of that? That would be useful, I think.
Sure. Yeah. So on the navigator, we kind of think about that whole child framework as student background factors, um, social and emotional factors, cognitive factors, and then content related factors. And so a student background factor might be something like how much sleep they got. And that can affect a cognitive factor like working memory. And so understanding that if sleep is impacting working memory and you're doing a vocabulary lesson, a student's ability to process and retain that information can be limited if their working memory is kind of not at peak performance. And similarly, understanding things like stereotype threat in the SEL category can have a big impact on working memory, which can affect how well students perform on assessments. And so understanding that when you see students' performance may not be where you want, there can be factors beyond just the content that can be impacting that.
And beyond like them too, right? Beyond their cognitive abilities, beyond, right? That's a really, really nice examples there. So thank you. Those are really helpful. Well, can we see the navigator? Can you
Yes,
share
let's
it
dive
with
in.
us?
Give me a minute to share my screen.
So folks, this thing is really cool. I'm gonna be honest. I've played around with it quite a bit, and it's really cool. And so Jessica's gonna show us kind of how you can walk through it a little bit. But I've also asked her to kind of talk to us about the different ways you can use it, like, so purposes here, like when should you come to this and look for things, and then the who can use this, right? Like who this is really for.
I need screen sharing access.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay, I'm like over here just trying to. Here you go. There you go.
Okay. All right. So can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Awesome. So this is the navigator. You can get here by going to lvp.digitalpromiseglobal.org. And as we said before, it's free. And you can scroll down here, although I have to say, if you're watching this in a couple of weeks or happen upon this, our homepage is going to get a little bit of a facelift, so it might look a little different, but this menu bar will still be here. And so what you can come here and find are 7 different learner models. I'm going to go into the Literacy 712 model today. When you come to the learner model, the first thing you'll see are the factors. And so this is what I was talking about before. We have student background factors, social and emotional learning factors, cognitive factors, and literacy. As you hover over the different factors, it will show you how these factors are connected. And these are connections that have been found through empirical research. So it may feel like other factors should be connected, but that just means we haven't found the research yet to support that. But as you can see, I think this is one of the really powerful aspects of the navigator, is seeing how these factors are connected. And you can click into a factor like sense of belonging, and it will give you a summary of the research on this factor. So we have a team of researchers, and they work with other experts in the field to kind of do a review of all the research that is out there, and they use that to write these summaries. The factor connection wheel here will give you a little more context for how this factor is connected to some of the other ones in this learner model. As you scroll down, this one is they're not all this long, by the way. This is one of our longer factor summaries. You can also see the research-based strategies that are shown to support this factor. And so again, this is a great way to kind of make connections between the strategies that you're using and how they support certain factors. For every factor, we have a view, measures, and references tab. And so if there is an assessment or tool that can help measure a specific factor, it's listed here, as well as all the references that were used in order to draft this factor. So it's there if you want to dig deeper into the research. And so I'm going to show you one other thing. You can come to our strategies tab, and you can also filter by multiple factors. So if you're interested in kind of factors that address adverse experiences, but also stereotype threat, and you can continue to whittle down, it's going to show you only the strategies that address both of those factors. And so as you look at these strategies, you can kind of get a quick picture of some of the factors that they address. When you click into a strategy, this is also gives you an overview of the research. It will include examples of the strategy in action in classrooms and in ed tech products. We also include additional resources to help you implement this strategy, as well as a list of all the factors that this strategy has been shown to support, and similar strategies that are kind of in the same category as this strategy. So that's just kind of a general overview of some of the key features of the Navigator. And our primary audiences originally were, educators and ed tech developers. And so that's why on the strategy page, you see examples of how to use it in the classroom and in ed tech products. But I use this with coaches and professional development people, school leaders and MTSS coordinators and counselors, I think, are also great audiences for this tool. And when you come to the Navigator, I think there's a couple of different ways you can think about it. But I think it helps to have kind of either a student in mind that maybe you want to support, or a group of students, and thinking about what are some of the factors that could be impacting their learning. And here you can kind of explore, some of the connected factors. We know a lot of students experienced adverse experiences during COVID, right? So this is something that probably affects a lot of students beyond what we know. So understanding how that's connected to certain cognitive factors can be helpful in identifying certain strategies. But you can also kind of come at it from a different lens of thinking about, I'm planning a lesson on writing, and I want to make sure that I have, multiple means of engagement and representation, and understand what are some of the factors that I need to consider when I'm planning those. And so I think, again, this just kind of helps you understand those connections, other factors you want to consider. And then when you go to the strategy tab, you can make sure you're kind of filtering for all of those factors. So those are a couple of ways that you can use it. I'll stop there and see if you have any more questions, but then I
have a couple of questions after looking at this. Okay. So my first question is, right now we're in literacy 7 through 12.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we, kind of go back to the main page here, the factors page, I noticed when you were hovering over adverse experiences, nothing in literacy popped up. Right. So my question is, are we talking about research in children who would be in grade level 7 through 12 are going to have these things have been shown in research to be connected? Is that what we're really talking about here? Because, right, this isn't really about literacy at this point, because it wasn't even connected to the literacy stuff. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I think one thing to keep in mind is that, again, we're surfacing where there are connections in research.
Right.
So it doesn't mean that addressing this doesn't affect that. But
I guess I'm trying to think of folks who are not working with literacy, right? I'm not a literacy teacher, but I'm still interested in research on adverse experiences for kids in my grade level. Would this still give me that?
Absolutely. I've used this with teachers who are art teachers, computer teachers, science teachers. And so what is, the connections between student background, SEL, and cognition are important to understand beyond just the content connections. And a lot of those hold true across all of our models. And so, yes, I think this can be used across content areas, even though, the focus here is literacy. We do also have the disciplinary literacy factor. And this one kind of explains a little bit more about how literacy connects to some of the other content areas like social studies and science. And similarly, with the math models, they can be helpful for areas like technology and science that may incorporate, mathematics. So, so they can be used interchangeably, and hopefully we'll have a general learner model coming soon.
Yeah. And then I also saw you have the adult model. So for the research that went into the adult model, are we basically assuming this is anybody like 18 and up here is what we're looking at. So folks who are teaching in higher ed, this could be really useful for them, etc. Yes.
Absolutely. And one of my favorite activities to do with the adult learner model is actually to have teachers reflect on their own learner variability using this and think about what factors show up when you've had like challenging learning experiences where you weren't in your ideal setting, and what factors show up when you've had awesome learning experiences, and think about how contextual some of that is, how these factors change, like motivation can change depending on your context. And so that's also a good way to kind of start with the navigator. It's just kind of reflecting on yourself first. And then, okay, now with that understanding in mind, you can explore for students.
Yeah, super cool. I also know you have some stuff in the works, right? Some up and coming stuff. Can you tell us a
Yeah.
little bit about that?
Well, we are going to be adding professional learning to the navigator, and this will allow us to share some of the resources that we've created with educators as they've worked to implement the navigator. And one of my favorite ones that will be featured there is our student activity guide. And so this guide is about how to teach students about learner variability. And so it includes a little background for teachers who may not, have encountered that terminology before, and then how to explain it in student-friendly terms. And it also includes lessons that an educator created for her first graders that you can access and use. And so I think this is just one of many resources we hope to offer in our professional learning section for teachers to kind of help them figure out what is the best way to use this tool in their context.
Yeah, that's great. What else are we missing? What else do you want to share with us today?
Well, that's just one of many tools. We also have a tool about strength-based IEPs. And so these tools help folks kind of take a strength-based approach to the IEP process and really understanding students with disabilities through a whole child framework. And so this resource will also be available. And we'll put these slides together so that you can kind of go through and find the resources. But I think another thing that is just kind of interesting to note from the research is that, and I'm sure your audience knows this because they love learning sciences, but even brief professional development for educators on the science of learning and memory and how it connects to classroom practices can have vast benefits for teachers and really helps show an increase in student-centered approaches and improvements to lesson plans. And that's really our hope with the navigators, that it just makes some of that research accessible in a way that teachers can kind of come and troubleshoot, what's going on with their students and how to adjust their lesson plans. And really, if you're already familiar with frameworks like universal design for learning, which helps create more voice and choice for students, but still, I think using the navigator with a framework like that can help you be more strategic about what are the strategies you're choosing and why, because you have a deeper understanding for some of the factors that could be at play there.
Yeah, one of the things that when we're giving workshops that we like to talk to educators about is that this can seem a little overwhelming, right? There are tons of strategies out there. I mean, usually we're only talking about 6, and here there's a lot of strategies that are evidence-based. the goal here is not to do a huge upheaval, right? That educators are already, they're the superheroes of our worlds, right? They're doing amazing work. And this is meant to be a way to simplify their efforts, so that they can quickly and easily find the things that they're looking for their unique students, and ways that they can help them out. So I just wanted to throw that out there, that our goal here isn't to say do all these things, right?
Yes.
It's when you have a situation and you're looking for a solution, instead of having to dig through academic literature, hey, somebody's already done that for you.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think it's really helpful. I know we're looking at the adult learner model here, but just to come and look at all the strategies. I mean, sometimes just like, oh yeah, I didn't think of that, but here it is listed here. This would be perfect. And the thing that's great when you're looking at these strategies is, again, just I mean, most of these are strategies that I think teachers that with more than 2 years of experience are familiar with or have heard of, but it's just understanding how these could potentially support certain factors so that you can use those strategies more strategically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I did want to share one other tool that we have as a part of the Navigator, and it's the ability to make workspaces. And so if you go to our tools and click on Learner Centered Design tool, it will walk you through picking certain factors and strategies for a specific purpose. And so I wanted to share an example of what one of these looks like. And so this is one we did in partnership with a coach and teacher last spring when they were getting ready for assessments. And a lot of those students had not had assessments in 2 years because of COVID and hybrid learning. And so there was a lot of anxiety around, taking this big assessment. And so what you can do in a workspace is select certain factors that you really want to focus on. And then similarly, select certain strategies. And you can kind of organize that to focus on certain strategies around, mindset that might be affecting assessment, anxiety like SEL, building stamina, supporting metacognition. And so we were able to kind of talk with this teacher about, what felt like a good strategy for her to try with her students based on how they were feeling and where they were. And she chose expressive writing. And so this video here kind of highlights her experience with that and shares strategies. And so the workspace tool is a great way to kind of collect factors and strategies for a specific purpose, add your own resources to it, and then share that either with colleagues, if you're like supporting the same group of students, or a coach or something like that.
Yeah, I love that idea. I feel like this could be a nice PLC, right? A nice
Yeah.
little learning community in a school that you've got grade level teachers all getting together and can work together to create something that they're working on collectively.
Yeah. And
So
there
that's really cool.
in this workspace section here, there's directions on how to use a workspace, and it can kind of walk you through the process if that's something of interest to folks.
Yeah, very cool. Is there anything else that we missed that you wanted to chat about today, Jessica? This has been fantastic. I mean, really, really great to just kind of walk through all the different things that are available. For folks who are watching, we will have lots of links associated with this video. So if you're watching this and from like the email or something, you might have to go to the website to get those links, but we'll have lots of links associated with this so that you can easily get to the navigator. And I think we'll have a few extra resources there too. Are we missing anything else?
I mean, I think
You're like, I could go on for
there's
3
always more
hours.
we could talk about. There's always more we could talk about, but I think this is a great starting point. And I'm also happy to share my email if you're using the tool and you want support, or you're interested in sharing how the tool worked for you. I'd love to hear about that. We're always trying to collect, stories of impact and get feedback from teachers, and so excited to just share this with more people.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Jessica.
Thank you, Cindy.